Hi, welcome to day 25 is it, of the lockdown. Thank you for all your nice kind comments and the emails that we've had coming through. Lots of people have been fascinated by the idea of loading in all the different presets that we covered yesterday, and we've had a follow-up question which is a slightly technical question, but I think it will be interesting for people to hear the answer as well. So this is an extra little bit to add on to the video yesterday when, if you remember, we were talking about being able to load in individual banks from the memory stick. So just to recap, we were going to our USB and choosing load presets, and we were able to load in one bank of presets rather than all 5 banks. So if we wanted to load in the pipes and piano, we'd bring them off the stick from track A on the stick, or bank A on the stick, sorry, and then choose to put them into one of the banks on the organ. It didn't necessarily have to be A, we could put them into C. And in that way you could mix and match the different sets of one of your sticks. Now, so the question that came up is that if you had registrations that were in, well, say you had a bank of registrations and you only wanted to load in some of those registrations, maybe 5 to 10, and merge them with a different 1 to 5 or 1 to 4 from a different set, could you do that? Well, the quick answer to that is you can't do it with the loading procedure, because as we said yesterday, the loading procedure always loads in at the very least a whole bank of 10. So you can't load in just A1 or just A4 or just A5. It will load in all 10 registrations, or 11 if we're including the 0 preset. So with the loading procedure, there's not a way of doing that. However, there is a kind of a mechanical way that you can do it, an actual physical way that you can copy registrations from one bank to another, which is essentially what the question is how do you take some registrations from one bank and mix them with the registrations from another bank. So what we can do, say for example, let's go back to USB and load presets, that we like the Mantovani registrations. So we want to have the Mantovani registrations. Let's load them into bank A. So we'll load Mantovani A into A, as we did yesterday. And so we've got all the Mantovani registrations. But actually what we want is just the first 5 Mantovani registrations. The other one where it goes into the accordions and things and rosettes, not really fussed about. I want to have, for example, some panpipe registrations there. Well, we can't just load in the panpipe registrations over bank A, because that's going to replace all of them. But what we can do is take the panpipe registrations. Let's go to load presets and take pipes and piano. Now we're going to load them from A on the stick. Remember that it's always loading from A, and I'm going to load them into B, because if I put them into A they're going to go over all my Mantovani ones. So we'll load them into B. And this is the bit that's a bit mechanical, because obviously now we've got the Mantovani ones in A and the pipes ones in B. This is exactly what we did yesterday. But what we can do now is take the pipe registration, say B1, and save it ourselves, memorize A6 with the style into bank A. So I've copied that registration from B1 into A6. So let's go through that again. If we want to take B2, which has got a bit of choir in the background on the left hand, and we want to put that into bank A, we press memorize, we choose bank A, and this time I'm going to push it into preset number 7. Now when you're memorizing presets like that, it always asks you on the screen if you want to include the style. We're going to say yes this time, and we turn memorize off. And so we've taken that registration, B2, and saved it into A7. We can carry on, B3, memorise that into A8 with style. And then we can take number 4, memorise into A9, remember to do with style. Now, and carry on to do number 5. Let's put that one and fish it off into A10 with style. There we go. So now I've got into A, I've got my first Mantovani ones. They're still all there, but A6. They're the panpipe registrations. So I've actually merged those two banks together, as it were. I've had to load them in separately and then individually copy the registrations across from one bank to the other, but I have in fact put them together in my own bank there. And of course, once I've done all that, I could then save that, save presets, and put that at the end of the list, number 20, and there we've got our own set of our own unique combination there of presets. Now, of course, I could do that for a whole number of different presets and build up lots of registrations. I mean, when I'm doing that myself, I tend to always load the registrations that I want to pick out. I load them into Bank E, so they kind of sit at the top, and I can pick them out and then push them into A, B, C, D as I want to, and then finally, when I've got all my ones filled up in A, B, C, D, I load into A, the final set that I really want to keep, and then I've got all the 50 together. So I hope that kind of makes sense. Again, it's a bit of a technical thing, but by doing that process, if you load in the bank so if you want to merge two banks together essentially, or two or three or four, load them all in separately into the respective numbers, A, B, C, you can load them all in there, and then pick them out, choose them, and then memorize them back into the bank where you want to put them all together, say in Bank A and so forth. And of course, once you've done all that, make sure you save it, very important. So, I hope that makes sense. I'm sure if you've got any queries or questions, you can email or call us in the store. The thing I wanted to talk about today, and this gives you a little bit of homework to do over the weekend, is with the feature clear button. Quite an innocuous little button sitting over here. On all the Lowrey organs, this button normally is used to bring up the list of features on the screen. So when you press it, it brings up a list of features on the screen which you're able to scroll through. In fact, there are 11 pages on this Symphony Showcase. And it's also used for clearing the screen. If you've got a screen up there, I don't know, there we go, that's showing the keypad, and I want to get rid of that, we'd use the feature button there to clear it, to get the screen back to normal. That's why it has clear written underneath it. So under normal circumstances, we either press that on its own to bring up the feature memory, or we press it again when it's lit up to clear that screen and get it back to normal. Well, that's what we normally use the feature clear button to do. But one of its little hidden features is the fact that it can be used as a shortcut to bring up information screens very, very quickly, rather than you searching through menus and so forth. So, for example, one of the features that Tom talked about in his video on the keypad was you could set the sustain levels. Well, if you actually wanted to see how the sustain levels have been set, all you do is hold down the feature button, so I'm holding it down, and touch one of the sustain buttons. And that immediately brings up on the screen all the information about what the sustain lengths are. And then I can actually touch them and then scroll them and change them. If I wanted to immediately go to the drawbars on the tabs, and this applies on most of the large Lowreys, the ones that feature drawbars. Unfortunately, if you have an Inspire, this won't work, but anything above the Inspire, it will do. You can hold down the feature button, hit a tab, and the drawbars come straight away up on the screen. So without you having to go into a menu. And so you can have an experiment, this is the homework, is to hold down that button and see how many different screens you can get it to bring up for you. Because it's quite fascinating. So for example, if you hold down the feature button and press the Theatre Genius, it shows you all the volume controls for the lower manual, the theatre, the Genius, the string and the flute volume. So you've gone straight to that page. So it's a great way of using being a shortcut to jump to a setting. If you want to see how the AOC is set, hold that down, press the AOC and it goes straight to the AOC screen. Let's try the reverb one. There you go, hold down feature and press reverb, it takes you straight to the reverb screen. So it's a brilliant shortcut, and as I say, over the weekend, why not sit down at your organ, hold down your feature clear button and go around pressing buttons and see what happens in terms of what screen it brings up and what information might be useful to you. And it's a great little shortcut, nice little hint, little tip there, and that applies on any of the organs that have this feature clear button. The other thing to have a look at this weekend are these custom buttons, which I'm just going to move the camera down a little bit so you can see them. They're always featured in this bottom left hand corner. Depending on the size of your Lowrey organ, You might not have any of these, but you might have 2, you might have 3, or on this one you might have 5. And we get asked actually a lot about what the custom buttons are, because we already use the custom buttons. In fact, we tell people to press button number 4 a lot, because button number 4, if we bring it up a little bit, will show you on the screen the preset information. If we press button number 2, is it? Yeah, it brings the drawbars up. Button number 5 brings up the keyboard screen so you can see the notes you're playing. But what a lot of people don't realise, you can actually customise these buttons, which is why they're called, let me just go up to me again, there we go, hello, which is why they're called custom buttons. They've already been set by Lowrey for you, but the same way that this feature button, when you hold it down, allows you to have a shortcut to go into a screen, well, these custom buttons can be a shortcut to go into a screen. So for example, say you do lots of loading of presets, so you want to immediately load presets. Normally we go to USB and press load presets, and then they come up on the screen. Well, if you actually want to avoid having to press those 2 things on the screen, we can actually get that screen there as a shortcut. In fact, we put it into a custom button. So all we do is, while that screen is up there, we press memorize, and we choose one of our custom buttons down here. I'm going to choose number 1, and it says on there memorizing to custom number 1, and at the moment I want to have that screen display memorized, so I'll turn memorize off, and let's just clear the screen. So next time I want to load something straight from the stick, I can actually now just press custom button number 1 and it goes straight to it like magic. In fact, you can get it to remember any screen that comes up on the right hand side of this organ, of the screen, or the main information screen, if you've got a Prestige with a single size screen. And that's essentially what Lowrey have done already in these custom buttons. They've pre-selected number 3 to bring up the touch bar settings, number 2 to immediately bring up the drawbars. Now I've changed number 1 to immediately bring up the USB loading screen. So for example, you can choose any of the screens that come up in the features. One of the big questions that comes up is split points. So normally, to move the split point, we press feature, we scroll through our pages and pages of features till we find one we want, set splits, there we go. And when we turn on a Lowrey organ, the split point always defaults to its standard location, which is just here. But say for example I wanted to have the split point lower down, I wanted it down on C. So what I can do is move the split point down to C, which I do just by hitting C, and you can see on the screen it's moved down to the split point being there now. So all I have to do now, if I want to remember that, is press memorize, and I'm going to use custom button number 2 this time. And this is the interesting bit, is that what I want it to remember this time is not that screen. I don't need to see the split screen. What I want it to do is remember the value that I've set on that screen. So this time I change it to value and setting. Turn memorize off. And now, whenever I hit button number 2 or custom button number 2, the split point will move to that position. So if I reset the organ, let's go back to square one. We get it to wake up. Yeah, da-da-da-da. We've got our lovely conductor's hands now, the Lowrey symphony. And now the organ's gone back to square one. If we have a split in the right hand, the split is going to go back to the standard Lowrey position, which is just here. So if I come down, get a change over there. Now, if I press custom button number 2, if you see it briefly flash on the screen, it says value and settings set splits. It's now moved that split point to there, without me having to go into the screen and reprogram it via the screen. Just that one button press will store that setting. Let's do another quick one. Let's, for example, say we like to set the foot switches very quickly. So again, we'd normally have to be going to foot switches, press that, and we'll see we've got, at the moment, they're set to the default settings of glides and sustain and FX on the right hand side. If we want them to be something else, let's change them completely and make one of them light show and the other one I don't know, transpose up. So I've messed up the foot switches. They're the settings that I want. Unfortunately, if I turn the organ off or reset the organ, they're going to go back to default settings, but that's what I want to keep. So again, memorize. Let's put this into custom button number 3 this time. And again, I'm going to choose value and setting because I want it to keep how I set those foot switches. So memorize off. So let's just see, our left foot switch now is doing the light show. There we go. Wow, look at that light show on. And my right foot switch is doing transpose. You see that transpose coming on there? And that's quite happy. But of course, if I reset the organ, wait for it to wake up again. There we go. My foot switches will have gone back to their normal setting. The left one will be glide and sustain, so at the moment it's not doing anything. The right one is FX, which again is not going to do anything because I haven't got style on. I press my custom button number 3. Value and setting has flashed up on the screen there very briefly, and now my left foot switch has gone back to doing the light show, and the right one is turning on the transpose. So I managed to record into that custom button my setting for the foot switches. And of course you can do the same for the touch bar. In fact, you can do the same for any of the features that come up on the features list. You can either store the screen, if you want that screen to come up. If you're particularly fond of looking at a particular screen while you're playing, you can pre-program it to come into one of those custom buttons. Or, if you like a particular value that you set on the screen, you can do the same thing, except you choose value and setting at that storing stage. So when you press there, if you just want to remember what screen is up there, which is what we did at the beginning when we were loading from the USB, we just wanted to go straight to the load screen, we remember screen display. If we have a setting on that screen that we want to keep, like a split point or foot switch, then we choose value and setting. And as I say, you can store that, a mixture of them in the custom buttons. So in this organ we've got 5, some we've got 2, but the procedure is the same on all the instruments. So I hope that's been interesting too. I've actually found it fascinating, get lots of feedback from people saying how amazed that they've discovered these things from the videos and never known them about their Lowrey organs and never listened to the styles and never realised what happens with the FX. So hopefully we're kind of giving you a whole new insight into your organ while we're stuck here on lockdown. So homework for the weekend then, have a practice, maybe have a go at copying individual registrations between banks. Have a see what the feature button does when you hold it down and press buttons. And if you want to change your custom buttons, you have particular screens or set split points or what you want to do with foot switches, all those kind of things, you can remember them in the custom buttons yourself and make them, literally customise them for how you like it to be. So, have fun with that lot. I'm not in for the weekend, so I'll see you again on Monday, and as ever, stay safe and stay well, and keep playing your organ, keep having lots of fun, and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.